And for more on the worldview on this and some international headlines today, let's bring in ABC's Patrick Reevell from London on this. Patrick, how are other world leaders reacting to this explosion in Poland and the Polish president's response now that this was, in his words, an unfortunate accident?
Yeah, hi, Dan. I mean, as we've been hearing from Tom, I mean, right now it appears that this was an accident. Poland's leader has said that this appears to have been a Ukrainian missile that went astray and was trying to shoot down, obviously, this barrage of Russian missiles. And that obviously has had all the difference in the world, because it means that Russia was not trying to intentionally hit a NATO country. And so right now we're seeing from all leaders really an attempt to tamp this down. And obviously, you know, there was a question of would NATO be convened? Would there be an emergency meeting? Would Poland request an emergency meeting of NATO members? It seems like they're not going to do that. And so I think that all right now this points to just a general effort to try and tamp down the tension around this, because neither side wants to escalate this. We know also that Russia itself certainly doesn't want to pick a fight with NATO right now. They're having enough trouble as it is dealing with Ukraine.
And let's move now to Iran. The regime there, Patrick, has handed down 3 more death sentences to protesters there. What's the latest on that and on the protests themselves?
Yeah, the protests are very much still continuing in Iran now, more than 2 months. We've seen them actually escalate in the last couple of days around an anniversary of a crackdown 3 years ago that was very bloody and that saw as many as 1,500 people killed by security forces then. At the same time, we're seeing the Iranian regime seem to really just press on deeper and deeper with terror. As you were saying, you know, they've now passed these first death sentences against protesters. And we know from the UN that supposedly there's been as many as 14,000 people detained already in Iran since these protests began. But the protests are still continuing despite the violence. We know that strikes are growing and have become more widespread than ever across the country. And so I think really we're just seeing what looks like increasingly a showdown is inevitable between the protesters and between the regime. And it's very hard to see which side that one side can emerge and can survive the other, really.
Meanwhile, China's also facing violent unrest over its zero-COVID policy. It's locking down a major university in Beijing now. What's the latest there?
Yeah, we're seeing more and more problems, really, for China and its zero-COVID policy. I mean, over the last couple of days, we've seen very violent unrest, violent riots breaking out in the southern industrial city of Guangzhou, where we've seen people trying to topple cars, overthrow cars, to try and break through COVID control barriers. And really that is just where people's frustration and anger over a mandatory lockdown has boiled over, because China has this sort of hair trigger lockdowns that wherever there are cases of COVID, whole cities can go immediately into lockdown. And increasingly it's becoming untenable, not only because of the civil unrest that we're seeing, but because of also the damage to China's economy. And so China appears to be slowly and quietly trying to move away a little bit, sort of tiptoe away from this policy of zero COVID. We're seeing a sort of trial run, perhaps, of that happening in a northern city. But right now there's apparently just a lot of confusion about how can China get out of this policy, but also without a huge wave then of infections and, of course, deaths.
All right, Patrick Reevell from London for us. Thank you, Patrick.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.